Hello, I'm so excited because today we're going to have a chat with William and he's going to help us understand what would have been helpful for teachers to know when he was at school about how to support him. So William, what makes your experience of school different from, say, the child who sat next to you?
Oh, what made my experience different from the
Yeah,
person who
like
sat
what are
next to
your
me?
particular needs that you have? Like what that you have that mean that the teacher actually does need to put in a little bit of effort to make sure that you're going to be okay?
I think one of there was a few things. Firstly, emotional regulation didn't become easy to me.
Yeah. By the way,
Um,
before we talk about emotional regulation, there might be some mums or dads who've only just had a recent diagnosis for their child of autism. They may not know even what you mean by that. What do you mean by emotional regulation that you were struggling with?
cool. Um, the best example I can think of is if we were doing an activity I really enjoyed, and it was pack up time. Instead of packing up and getting ready for the next activity, like the rest of the class, I would get very upset and not want to pack up. So I would get angry. I would say, no, I want to keep doing this. And it would take me like 15 minutes before I was ready to start packing up.
That's right. So emotional regulation, I guess, being handling your emotions in a way that they support you instead of feeling like your emotions are dragging you around doing what they want to
Yes.
do.
It's
Okay.
it's I've heard a terminology that schools tend to use is I let my emotions control me a lot instead of
Yeah.
controlling my emotions.
I get that instead of harnessing them. So what do you wish teachers understood about those skills that you didn't really have at that point or didn't have down pat? No one's ever got them down pat, but it's
Mm.
like, what do you wish they understood? One is, look, give me 15 minutes warning time before we pack up for my favorite game. That would help.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
else do you
totally.
wish?
I think one of the big things is just for teachers to realize young people with autism aren't bad kids. They
It's
just
true.
have that trouble with emotions. I had one or two teachers who I think they saw me as like the problem child. Um, and in those years, I always felt like an outcast. And actually, a lot of the other kids would bully me in those years because they could see the teacher thought that I was a bit more of like an outcast. And so I think I think it yeah, just knowing that having bad emotional regulation isn't the same as being a bad child. Like it's not that I'm malicious, it's not that I'm trying to make your life hard. I'm just struggling to figure out what's in my brain and struggling to not let that control me.
That's amazing what you're saying. In fact, there's gold there. I just wish every teacher could hear you say that. Because I mean, I remember one year when I was teaching as a full-time teacher, my classroom was next door to another classroom. I had a young guy with autism in my classroom, and so did the teacher beside me. I loved my little guy. Like he was
Mm,
awesome. He was fun. But the reality is that obviously you have to put a lot of work into making sure that he's
mm,
succeeding. Happy to do that. Love him. In the classroom next door, the teacher was like, oh, I don't like this or this or this, or I don't like these behaviors or whatever. And that teacher was being like you're describing. And what that means is that child then feels like I don't matter to this teacher. And
mm.
then the community, the kids in that class would view him as annoying or disrespectful. Whereas they'd view my little guy as he's just doing what he does. He's not hurting anyone. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm.
if only the teacher understood. But then what you're describing is the teacher views that child as the actions that they take that make it hard for them.
Mm.
But if the teacher could understand, whoa, this is not the child trying to be a nuisance. This is the child doing their best with a limited emotional regulation toolbox.
Mm.
And it's going to be messy a fair bit of the time. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, William, what goes through your head when I say, I wish you'd been in my class that year, like I'm not old enough, I hope. But it's like, what goes through your head when I say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's hard. I mentioned in another video we've done that may not be uploaded at the moment that I've done a teaching course, and in that teaching course, I had a lot of young people who were in the same boat as what I was. Now, I had that experience of being able to know what they were going through, um, but it's really hard sometimes as a teacher to have a young person like that when you're focused on getting the day going and maintain that that empathy and that compassion. Sometimes you just feel fed up and feel like you want them to just stop, just for a little bit, just stop. It's not reasonable. It's a very human reaction. It's a very I just need to take care of myself for a moment kind of reaction. But it's really important that teachers catch themselves when they do that.
It's interesting you say that, because it's difficult.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it's worth it, because otherwise that little guy in your classroom feels like a failure for a year. Unfair. Okay, so what's something else that what's something else that a mum or a dad who's watching this, their kids who would have, say, autism, what does their teacher need to know about how to help their own child? William, what do you wish your teachers had understood?
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing was, it went, like, going back to that first question of what was different about me to the person sitting next to me.
Yeah.
As a young person with autism, I tended to get really obsessed with specific things. So while the person next to me was sitting writing with a pen, I had cut out a Harry Potter feather quill and sticky taped it to my pen, and I was sitting there humming the Harry Potter tune as I was writing, doing it in like wiggly cursive because that's how Harry Potter wrote. So I think it's just that acknowledgement that that a lot of young people with autism get really attached to specific characters, media, or niche interests. And so I worked as a chaplain for a little bit, and I had a young person with autism in the kindy room. I think it was a small country school, so they had like a few years. I think they were in year 1 or 2. But what that teacher did that was really clever is that young person was really into Sonic. So
Sonic the Hedgehog?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Got it.
And so whenever they had to do a project, she would theme that project after Sonic.
How good's that?
Yeah. And so by the end of the year, they had like this car that this young person had made. It was like a cardboard box with wheels that moved. It was so cool. But it was a Sonic car.
That's so cool.
And there were drawings and paintings on the wall, and there were Sonic drawings and paintings. And so this young person had enthusiastically finished all of their year's work because the teacher let them express what they loved.
That's so exciting. William, hearing that makes me almost want to go back and redo 20 years of teaching. I'm like, why didn't I do that? You know, like there was this little guy who he loved cups of tea. He loved all these different types of cups of tea. And I think back, I'm like, well, why didn't I let him have a cup of tea at his table? Why not?
Oh.
I could have. I mean, lukewarm, like, you know, don't burn someone.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I didn't know back then. Or I think, you know, like it's those, like you said, those niche interests like Pokemon, Minecraft. It's like, yeah, there's lots of assignments where you can do it. You can modify it a bit. So it's about what would the Pokemon do, or what, you know, how does someone in Minecraft do, you know, you can modify it. And I think most teachers are willing to do that, but they need to know ahead of time that that's going to be helpful. Totally. So mum needs to communicate at the start of the year. This is completely fine with me. If you make every assignment about Minecraft somehow, fine, you know, and maybe even like giving the teacher the idea. They don't know what they don't know, you know. And can I ask, what are you into right now, William?
Oh, like, what am I into right now?
I'm guessing it's not Sonic. What are you into right now? What's your thing at the moment?
Gosh, I think as I've gotten more mature, my interests have broadened a little bit, and I'm no longer as tunnel visioned on the one thing. But I tend to go through. These days, I have like genres that I get really into, and I tend to switch between sci-fi and fantasy.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So there are times where I'm really into sci-fi and I'm like all about my Star Wars and my Star Trek. And there's times where I'm really into my fantasy and I'm all about like the Harry Potter and well, it's mostly games, to be fair, that I play that are fantasy. But I found that as I've gotten older and matured a bit more, My interests have gotten broader rather than just being focused on a single franchise.
That's really cool.
Um,
I love hearing you basically say, if you've got a U4 child who won't do anything but, say Sonic, it is, as kids grow, they do get more and more interest, like this child's going to expand, you're
totally,
seeing, a very young version of this child. All right.
totally.
So I guess what we've covered is, what do you wish your teachers knew about you when you're at school? One is, be nice. Don't set a tone for the whole classroom to hassle me. Like, be nice.
Yes.
Like, value. The quirkiness is to be valued, okay? And the second thing is, like, when you can make an assignment about Sonic the Hedgehog, do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't, the whole class doesn't have to do Sonic the Hedgehog like this fantastic kindy teacher did, but at least that child can,
Yeah.
What else do you wish your teacher had been able to know about you ahead of time?
I guess the last big thing that I would have really appreciated and ended up appreciating when it actually did happen is, don't make autism into this big mystery, both for the child and for the class. Yeah, like a big mystery.
So tell us about that.
So when I was really, really young and I just first got my diagnosis, I didn't really know what it was. And no one really explained it to me well. I think they were afraid to make me feel bad about myself. But they would say things like, oh, it means you're special, or oh, it means that you're really clever. But that didn't really mean anything to me, and I didn't really understand what it was until I was older and did my own research. So it's really important that you say, well, it means you're going to struggle in social situations a little bit. It means it might be a bit harder for you to make friends. And it means that, like, you might struggle a little bit when you're feeling angry or sad when compared to some other kids. But it also means you're really creative. It also means that you have a really unique way of looking at things. And that's just really helpful for the young person to be like, oh, okay, so there are some things I can expect to struggle with. I might struggle a bit when things get noisy or when things are really bright. And I know to look out for those things. And I know that I can tell my teacher about those things because they're there for me.
That's amazing. Like, how handy would that have been? So
yeah,
as a teacher, I think, okay, so thinking back to the little guy who loved cups of tea, it's like, at no point in the year did we talk as a class about that little guy's diagnosis. I hadn't cleared that with mum. And back then I didn't even have the skills.
Yes.
Whereas, if I could rewind the clock, hearing what you're saying, I'm like, well, the first thing I do is I chat with mum. Look, is this helpful or unhelpful? And then I'd chat with that young man. And then we'd do that. We'd have that conversation. There were lots of times where, kids would complain at me about what that guy was doing. And I'd say, well, hold on, let's call him William,
Exactly.
I'd be like, guys, William is William. We can live with this. Like, let's not make this a big deal. Go back and do your work. Okay. And like, there's like, it communicated acceptance, but it didn't communicate the why that would have been helpful. So I guess, how would that conversation play out, assuming a teacher has mum's permission and William wants them to do it? How would that conversation play out? Would that play out like while you're there, William, or would it play out while you go and do a job at the library for me? Like, how would you want that to play out in an ideal world, say if you're in year 6 or year 7?
I actually had a specific experience with this, Michael. So when I was in primary school, like I said, I really struggled to control my emotions. And as I got older, that started to manifest as whenever someone would tease me, I would have these really violent outbursts. I was trying to chase them down. If I caught them, I'd like punch them. It was really, really bad. And I had a lot of issues with my anger.
Which, by the way, if we have a look at that, you didn't have 12 different skills to deal with that teasing. That was your go-to strategy.
Yes.
Over time, you've obviously replaced that. We get 100%. There.
And it did take time and took therapy, but we won't get into that today. But the real breakthrough for that, because what you might have noticed, as I said, people would tease me, and they teased me because I was different. And the breakthrough was, one day I had a massive outburst. Like the whole class was kind of in on it. I ended up hitting like 4 or 5 people. And I got like this half-day suspension, and I was so embarrassed. I was feeling awful. And after my suspension was finished, I was walking back to class, and two people from my class said, "Hey, Will, how are you going?" And they were really happy and vibrant and accepting. And I was like, "What?" I was really kind of put off. And then for the rest of the day, everyone was really nice to me. And I only found out later what had actually happened is the vice principal had gone in and they'd sat down and had a talk about what autism is and the fact that Will really struggles to control his emotions. And so it's really important that we're extra nice to Will and that we're looking after him and being kind to him and understanding that he struggles with his emotions. And that changed my class's perspective. For the rest of the year, they were really helpful and supportive. And it was just, it's so hard to explain, but it was like everything got flipped on its head. Now, I'm not saying it fixed all the issues. There was still some teasing here and there that would crop up, but it was a lot less and a lot more manageable. And so I was able to learn how to control my anger. And because it wasn't so constant, because I wasn't the outsider and the outcast anymore, I had that social cushioning to help me be more in control of my emotions.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it didn't turn into these massive, like, violent outbursts anymore. I would shout and I'd get angry if someone teased me, but it wasn't nowhere near as intense as those initial ones.
That's extraordinary. And hearing that deputy principal went and had that conversation with them from the perspective of, guys, Will needs a hand.
Yeah.
Things are looking different to him to how they look to you. Like when you were describing that, I was having to choose to use my emotional regulation to not cry because I'm so personally impacted to hear that person, that deputy went to that level of effort and care and valuing you, you know. So okay, so that conversation was easier for you because you weren't there, or it would have been easier for you if you had been there?
It's hard to say. Because of my specific situation, I was in a half-day suspension at the time, obviously.
Made the choice for you. Yep.
Yeah, they made the choice for me, which had to happen. I had done something really bad. But the fact that something good came out of it was really nice. I think it's a mix. I think if I had been there, I would have felt really flattered, but I also would have felt really embarrassed. So I think it really depends on your young person. I probably would have done better not being there, so I'm glad I wasn't there for that conversation. But saying that, sometimes it's really nice to empower your young person to say a little bit about their experience, particularly if you can guide them. So something along the lines of, hey, Will, why don't you like the lights on in the classroom? Oh, well, the fluorescent lights really hurt my eyes. Oh, okay. Why do you get really angry when the classroom's loud? Because it feels really overwhelming, and like I just get really angry when there's loud noises around. And then expanding on what they're saying. So I think there's an extent where empowering someone is really useful, but sometimes to spare them from embarrassment, it's also good to kind of do that.
How quality to hear what you're saying. It's like there's no right answers, and I hope lots of people write comments about this down underneath so that we get multiple people's experiences. But it's like a lot of parents are thinking, okay, so how would I go about making that happen or whatever as they're watching this? It's like if your child's teacher has permission to explain the nitty-gritty while the child's not there, explain the hard stuff. Because then as a teacher, I'm not going to be explaining the hard stuff while William's sitting right there. That's not happening there. Okay. Yeah. They'll end up glossing over important information that the class needs to understand to be able to support him. So, yep, send Will on a job, on a mission to go and, you know, deliver whatever for me. Great. Have the hard conversation, and then not then and there, but probably the next day, have some Q&A, some questions and answer. We're going to ask Will some questions about what it's like for him, and we'll come up with the questions. We'll give Will the questions and a day to think about it, and then we'll interview him if that's how he wants it to be. You know, like, Will, I'm not saying that's the only way. Like, is that a way that might have worked for you, or would that might work for someone else, but not you? What are your thoughts on that?
I love that idea. And it would have done in that way. It kind of removes the need for there to be a huge violent outburst for it to happen.
Yeah. Or if we can see it about to happen, the first thing that's going to happen is a little guy's going to go turn the lights off for you. You know, like your people they're going to become your people instead of you in their world. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, totally. And I love hearing your perspective as well, because you've had a classroom. You know what it would be like mechanically to make something like that happen. And I love that idea of having an interview. Like, you could even make it like, today you're the celebrity. We want to hear about your experience. And
That's
that
amazing.
turns it from something that's like potentially negative to something really exciting.
That's right. And if he doesn't want to, if he's not confident to do that face to face, or he's worried that he doesn't have the emotional regulation yet to do that, he can make it a video and we'll play
Yeah,
it.
totally.
And we'll play it when he's there. Or if he's not, it's his choice. It's his life. But we're on his side. Now, not every school is going to be that accommodating. And there are some
No.
schools where, to be honest, it's like the jungle out there. You know, like it wouldn't matter what you say. The kids are going to socially annihilate anyone who stands out as different. But I'm hearing you say that there is, if teachers are willing to be bold and if parents are willing to go, hey, teacher, this would actually be helpful. If parents are willing to be brave, and if, then there's so much more that our teachers could be doing, but they don't know. And the only way for them to know is for Will to tell them. Year 6 version of Will's not going to do that, or for Will's mum or dad to tell them, and not just explain it, but explain the why. Show the teacher what's actually occurring to Will in a loud environment. It's overwhelm. It's like you being at a rock concert trying to do your maths. Not impossible, but probably wouldn't want to do it every morning. Like get and jot down like what these things help Will for these reasons. These things make it hard for him for these reasons. Let them see the world through Will's eyes, and then not all teachers, but most teachers just want to help. They might be overwhelmed or stressed or not even necessarily kind, but they do want to help. That's why most people become teachers. Will, do you have any other encouragements for parents or for teachers for equipping kids to do well at school? What do the teachers need to know?
I think like just to finish out, letting, as like we've spoken a lot about empowering the kids to understand, but like I guess also there's extent be understanding as well. When I was in high school and I did maths, I used to sing, and it was involuntary. I would just sing because my brain was that overwhelmed. So I sat outside the classroom, and that was really helpful for me. In primary school, I didn't like being grouped up in desks with other people. I liked to have a table by myself. And when I had that, I was really, really productive. Just let them sit by themselves.
Wow.
Let them have those little things that help them to focus, because they're already dealing with the fluorescent lights. They're already dealing with the sound of the person next to them's pencil. There's a million little annoying things that are going through their mind. So giving them that one thing that gives them a little bit of comfort will really, really help them. Like I used to have a kid when I was a chaplain that would hide under the desk to do their writing. And that helped them so much. They felt safe, they felt secure, it was helpful for them. So just, give them the little things.
That's right. And that little guy you're talking about hiding under his desk, the teacher could have, like thinking as a teacher, could have set up a slightly larger desk at the back of the room against the wall, where that little guy could have had like a spacious area that was effectively his.
Yeah.
The teacher could have even, if they were really thinking outside the box, put over like a tablecloth or something like that, that literally shut out the nasty lights and the sense of being watched. Did you used to wear a hat in class to knock out the fluoro lights?
No, but thinking back on it, it probably would have been really helpful.
Would have been the easiest modification in the world. Will wears a cap in class. Like there's so much that could be done, but it's like the teachers don't know to do that.
Yeah.
But Will, this has been one of my favorite YouTube videos that we've ever made. I think I've made like a few hundred in my life. This is amazing. I can't believe how much you've taught me. Yeah, thank you. And I'm thinking there'll be a lot of teachers who watch this who think, oh, I can learn from that. Parents, if you're watching this, write in the comments below, what do teachers need to know? Or what can other parents need to know about how to get the information to their teachers? If you're someone walking in Will's shoes, if you're doing life and you've got autism, write down what the teachers need to know. Someone's going to benefit from it. So thanks everyone for hanging out for us. And Will, thank you for being real.
No worries. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear from everyone, because I always find it encouraging to hear other people's stories too.
That's fantastic. Write something to Will. Good plan. Okay. Bye.
Take care, guys.
Hey, thank you for watching today's video. If you've had any experience with anything we spoke about in the video, feel free to leave a comment below. Sharing our experiences can be a great way to encourage people going through similar things. Also, if you like the sound of any of the programs we discussed in that video, feel free to check out our link below for more information on any of those.